Hey everybody, welcome back to Auto Anatomy. My name is Sean. Thank you so much for joining us. You know, I was thinking the other day, it has been far too long since we've done something kind of crazy with the Corvair. I mean, we've done the fuel injection, we've done custom stainless exhaust, we've rebuilt the front suspension, rebuilt the rear suspension, all kind of fun things like that. But most of the time lately, I've just been driving it and enjoying it. And then I thought, what's one part of the car that we haven't really addressed? So we've got the Go, we've got, you know, the new engine with the cam and the headers and the fuel injection. We've got the Turn with the all new suspension, but we have done absolutely nothing with the Woe because this car still has stock brakes on it. I was doing a lot of research trying to figure out, you know, what's the best way to get disc brakes on the front of the car. And I've looked at all kinds of things like, you know, using GM metric calipers and S10 brake rotors. And I'm sure all of those are fantastic ways to get disc brakes on it. But, you know, I have to go a little over the top on this one just because we can. And about that time, a gentleman named Val Doppenberg from Valvair Works reached out to me and said that he makes a set of brackets that'll allow you to bolt on a complete Wilwood disc brake system for a Chevy onto the front of your Corvair, and asked if I was interested. And I'm like, are you kidding me? How could I say no? So he sent me a set of brackets. I picked up a set of the Dynapro calipers, rotors, everything from Summit Racing. And today we're going to throw them on. So let me show you what we picked up. Here is the entire kit that we got from Summit Racing. It's 12.19 inch brake rotors, 4-piston calipers. I also picked up a new Wilwood master cylinder, and these are the brackets from Valvair Works. And basically they are going to bolt onto the original spindle, and then this bracket bolts onto this and allows you to mount the caliper, something kind of like that, so that you can put 12.19 inch brake rotors on your Corvair. Now, they will require a 15 inch or larger wheel. So I've already got 15s on there. I just kind of loosely threw this one together to make sure everything fits before I start putting it in the car. But I think before we dive into this thing, let's see how good the drum brakes are. So before we pull the drum brakes off, I want to take just a little bit of time and do some measurements. I want to see exactly how good the drum brakes are. Now, I know that they've been used in a lot of other applications over the years that were a lot heavier than the Corvair, but one of the big things that I'm really concerned about is not so much the stopping distance necessarily, but how much they fade. Because drum brakes are really good for a little bit of time, but as they get a little warmer, they tend to fade more. So how we're gonna do this is I'm gonna do some stopping distances. So not only are we gonna measure the distance it takes to get from 60 down to 0, but we're also gonna take an infrared thermometer gun and measure the drum temperature. And we can see kind of as the drum heats up, does the distance get longer and longer. And then we'll do the same thing once we get the disc brakes on. So I think it'll be a good like A to B comparison. So let me find a good safe place to do some stopping tests, get a few things set up, and we'll see how well the drum brakes do. I'm curious, I really am. All right, here we go with run number 1. And there's 60. All right, starting run number 2.
So after 3 runs, we've got a pretty good idea of how the stock drums work. So we're going to look at the 60 to 0 stock drum distance as well as the temperature after each run. For run number 1, we took 196 feet to get from 60 to 0, and the temperature was 148.2 degrees at the end of the run. Now for run number 2, a little bit longer, 198 feet, and of course a little bit warmer, 163 degrees Fahrenheit. Finally, for run number 3, it took us 197 feet and right at 180 degrees at the end of the run, for an average of 197 feet from 60 to 0 and an average temperature of 163 degrees. But that doesn't tell the whole story, because it doesn't show on video how with each subsequent run, the pedal got closer and closer and closer to the floor, and at the end of each run, it was getting softer and softer. Now, if you watch the video of the drum itself from inside the front wheel well, you'll notice when we initially hit the brake, it rotates forward pretty hard, but then as the time goes on, it gets slower and slower. It kind of starts to rotate back, and that's not me letting up on the pedal. That's just the brake starting to fade a little bit.
So honestly, the drum brakes are a little bit surprising. They did not perform as well as I kind of thought they might. That stopping distance is a little longer than I think is maybe appropriate for modern cars. Now you have to remember, when these cars came out in the 60s, everything pretty much had drum brakes on it. So if everything stopped in 197 feet, it wasn't a big deal. But nowadays, the stopping distance on average for cars is about 130 feet. So you can see we've got a problem. If everyone else stops at 130 feet and I'm at 197 feet, I'm going to cause an accident. So I think it's a good time to go ahead and upgrade the brakes anyway. Let's bring it up to modern technology. We've done it with the rest of the car, so I think it's time for the Corvair. If you like seeing this kind of content and like seeing classic cars get brought back to life, maybe even a lot better than they were when they were new, take just a moment and hit that subscribe button and click on the bell to be notified when new videos come out. It's an absolutely free way to help support our channel. You can also swing over to our website at autoanatomy.net, and I'll put a link up in the description up there where you can check out our merch page and pick up cool Auto Anatomy t-shirts. All right, let's get this thing torn apart. I'm anxious to see how well this thing looks with disc brakes on it. With the entire front brake assembly off on the driver's side, it's time to start mocking up the Valvair Works brackets. And it says here to install the bracket with the supplied 3/8 bolts. The longer bolt is the front, the shorter to the rear. Okay. And I just want to mock everything up right now, not really tightening things down too much. This just gives me a rough idea to make sure everything fits before we tighten too much. Next step is to bolt on the secondary bracket, and it looks like it bolts behind this initial bracket. And again, just going to loose tighten everything just to make sure everything fits, but so far it's looking perfect. Okay, looking at the Wilwood instructions, it looks like the first thing to do is to install the studs. And on the hub, there are 2 separate bolt patterns. So it looks like 5 4 1/4 and 5 4 3/4. Since this is a Chevy, we're going to do the 5 4 3/4. So I'll just kind of run these in and put a little thread locker on them when they get a little bit closer. All right, put a little thread locker on here, and then we're going to torque these down to 77 foot-pounds. Okay, next step, we've got this little adapter here, and it's held in place with some 3/8/16 torque bolts. So we'll run these in, get these Loctited and torqued, then we can put the rotor on. This is what I'm excited about, getting to see the rotor and getting to see everything kind of come together. This is a thing of beauty. This is going to be an unbelievable upgrade, and I kind of don't even want to put it on the car because it's so pretty, but also want to see how well it works. So it's going on the car. Okay. So this is the driver's side, so it's going to go this way. Yeah. All right, let me torque these down, then clean all the thread lock up, and I think we'll be ready to install this thing after we put some, bearings and seals and stuff like that in it. Okay, next step, pack some bearings. All right. Next, we need to start working on the dust cap on the original one, because we've got to take the drive assembly for the speedometer out of it and install it into the new Wilwood cap. So if you flip over to the outside, you can see there's 3 little dots, and I've already center punched them, but that's basically 3 little spot welds that we're going to drill out and try and release the plastic drive as well as that little metal retainer, so that we can then modify it to fit the Wilwood cap. So let me drill these things out and we'll show you what's next. Oh, well, there we go. With the speedometer drive out, it says to take this and thin it and just flatten it out, because you can see it's rounded right now and the bottom of the dust cap is flat. So we're going to take this over to the grinder and just barely kiss it, see if we can get it flat, and then we will put this back together and then JB weld it in place. Man, that just fits perfect. Okay, let me clean up this excess on the walls here and then set this guy aside to dry. Okay, so to install the rotor, slide it over, and we're going to use the Wilwood Castle, or the Wilwood spindle nut with the Corvair castle nut. And I have to say, already this thing looks fantastic. So I actually made a mistake here. I needed to read a little bit further. On the driver's side, you need to modify the original Corvair washer. So I'm just going to take this back off, and then we will modify the Corvair washer to fit the diameter of the Wilwood washer. On the passenger side, you use the Wilwood washer. So let me pull this back apart, make one quick modification, and then we'll be back to where we were. Okay, I need to modify the original Corvair washer to the diameter of the Wilwood washer. So I don't know if you can tell, it looks like it's about 1/8 of an inch all the way around. So I'm just going to go over to the bench grinder and just take my time and grind this guy down to this diameter. Then we can put this thing back together again. We are modified now, so that way that should fit a little bit better. I think it just needs to be a little thinner in order for the castle nut to line up. One last modification to the little retainer here. Just basically have to grind the end of it off in order to get it to fit, and then this should be done just like that. So next, let's move on to mounting the caliper and then get the hoses done, get everything else done on this side. Then hopefully by that time the dust cap will be dry. We can get this the dust cap on, and then this side will be done completely. Okay. All right, it says next to mount the caliper, and to put one of the thin shims that comes from the Wilwood kit in between the caliper and the bracket. So we'll just kind of slide it on here and see how that fits. And finally, there we go. And just like that, one side is complete. Now, obviously, I haven't bled the brakes yet because I still have to replace the master cylinder, but that actually went on really, really well with basically no modifications to the brackets. And now on to the passenger side, which should be a whole lot easier because I don't have the whole speedometer thing, and I don't have to modify the spindle washer or anything like that. So it should be literally just unbolting the brake hardware and then bolting on the bracket, bolting on the new calipers and rotor and everything. And then I think it's time we move on to the master cylinder. So the car is back on its feet with the new Wilwood discs up front, and I like the fact that you can just barely see them through the 15-inch wheels, so it's pretty subtle. Now there's one last thing that we have to do before we can go drive this thing, and that's going to be replacing the master cylinder. Now in a previous video, we upgraded from the single master cylinder on the 65 to a dual, and now we're going to replace it completely with something even better. This is the Wilwood master cylinder that was recommended for the swap, and I think it's a 1-inch bore master cylinder. So, and in theory, it should just unbolt the original one, and then this one should bolt straight on. We've got a couple of fittings to make, some hoses. There is a residual pressure valve for the rear drum brakes that was recommended, and then making up a couple of lines, and then I think we should be able to go bleed the brakes and take it for a spin. So let's just test fit this thing and see how it lines up. All right, bolt pattern looks good. Hole looks good. I'm probably gonna have to adjust the push rod in here just to make sure it's the right length, but otherwise everything looks on the up and up so far. So let me just do a little playing with the push rod length here to get it right, and then I think we should be ready to start mocking up some brake lines. Hard lines are done. Let's pull this all back apart, get the master cylinder bench bled, and then clean up all my little Sharpie marks. And I think we're ready to bleed the brakes for good and then go take it for a drive. And just like that, the master cylinder is installed. Still have to bleed the brakes, but I think it came out really nice. It looks really trick in there. The lines came out good. I'm pretty happy with the way that turned out. So now all we have to do is just bleed the brakes, and then we can go finally take it for a spin and see how much better these Wilwood discs stop than the original drums. So with the brakes all bled, we're going to take it on its first test drive. And I've already done some like 65 to 20 stops to try and bed the pads in. And just without getting on it too hard, it is night and day, the difference. So these brakes, it almost feels like you're throwing an anchor out. And I haven't even really gotten on them as hard as I can. So I've got a pretty good feeling this is going to be a pretty dramatic difference in the way the car feels. Now we're going to do the exact same testing procedure that we did before. We're going to go to the same road, same time of day, do 60 to 0 stopping distances. Probably not going to do temperature this time because it doesn't really matter as much. What matters more than anything is the distance that goes from 60 to 0. So let's get back to our test site and see how big of a difference this makes.
So here's what you've been waiting for. On run number 1, we went from 196 feet all the way down to 101 feet for a difference of 95 feet. The distance was even more dramatic on run number 2, where we went from 198 feet all the way down to 97 feet. Now, on run number 3, we went from 197 feet to 100 feet, and on average, we went from about 197 feet to about just shy of 100 feet, for a difference of just about 100 feet, so almost half. You know, someone told me once when I was doing SCCA that it's always better to get out of trouble faster than you can get into it. And I think we've accomplished that with this. So with a combination of the Valvair Works brackets and the Wilwood 12.2-inch rotors and 4-piston calipers, that basically halves our 60 to 0 braking distance. Now, with a distance of about 98 feet, that puts it in some pretty elite company, like, I don't know, a C8 Corvette, or a Porsche 911 Turbo, or a Lamborghini Murcielago 670. And it's kind of hard to believe for a 60-year-old car that it can stop that well. But it almost stops so well that it really does make me want to put in, like, shoulder belts, because if someone was riding the passenger seat and didn't know that we had to panic stop, you could get hurt. It stops so fast. So when I do the interior of the car, that will definitely be an upgrade that's coming. So if you're interested in making your car significantly safer than it was before, make sure you reach out to Valvair Works and pick up a set of their brackets. I know they've got early model, late model, and Val can fill you in on any other products that he's got available. I also want to say a special thanks to our channel members and Patreons. So our channel members get exclusive behind-the-scenes candids and access to videos before it gets released to the general public. So if you're interested in joining and being a channel member of the Auto Anatomy YouTube channel, just click on that join button below and it'll take you right through. We've got a bunch of different options that fits all kinds of budgets. But thank you so much for watching. Take care of yourselves. God bless, and we will see you hopefully in Dayton, Ohio for the Corsa Nationals. Take care.